Hey everyone, good morning. I know my thumbnail said 8 p.m., but I decided to do it at 8 a.m. because for Natalia it's 10 o'clock. So I figured a lot of people will probably be up at this time. I'm so excited to have Natalya Murakhver,
Murakhver.
Murakhver have- who's a filmmaker who made a film. I know I'm smiling and happy this morning. That would be my coffee. But she made a film that honestly it makes you angry. It does. It makes you angry because this film is called 15 Days. I'm going to just pull it up really quickly. It's 15 Days, the real story of America's pandemic school closures. And you guys, this film is amazing. And also, I mean, I think I would go with the word insulting. It's insulting what they did to us. But it's just so refreshing to have people who are willing to say the truth. It's just to have people who are standing up and saying, you know what, this happened. It should never have happened. Let's never let it happen again. And so that's the kind of person that Natalya is. And so I just want to welcome you and just tell me a little bit about your organization.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. Well, we started Restore Childhood 4 years ago. It's almost 4 years to the day. During the COVID, after the school closures, there were the terrible mandates where I live in New York City. We were masking toddlers as young as 2 years old. I really felt like nobody was speaking up. There were just like a small handful of parents, mostly moms, who did. We connected with parents all around the country. And with doctors who, are currently now in Washington at the FDA. And is that my ringer? Are you ringing or am I ringing?
You are.
Oh my gosh. Wow. An old fashioned landline. Yes, that's what we have. That's the kind of family we are. We are very analog. It's ringing. It'll probably end at some point. There's no voicemail. Anyway, so we started this organization called Restore Childhood. It was the first thing that led up to it was we had a toolkit that I helped organize with Tracy Beth Hogue, who's now at the FDA. And it was a toolkit called Urgency of Normal. It was for parents to present to their school boards, to teachers, to anyone in leadership roles in their children's education and welfare, to show them that there was no science behind mask mandates, social distancing, or any of these crazy mandates that had nothing to do with children. And that precipitated the formation of our organization, Restore Childhood, which exists to empower parents and preserve family values, and above all, as I think this film shows, to amplify the voices we should be listening to, the heroes, the people with courage, the people who speak the truth. And, I think there's a common misperception that people were quiet and didn't speak out during COVID, but they actually did. And I think we show that it was everyone from parents and students to doctors like Jay Bhattacharya who were threatened with their lives on the Stanford campus. So there was a manufactured illusion of consensus that we saw. The Biden administration had forced the hand of the social media companies to censor dissenting voices. It was, Fauci and Collins had, decided that they were going to do a swift and devastating takedown of these incredible, heroic doctors. But the doctors did speak up, and they didn't stop speaking up. And there's proof of the fact that, in normal circumstances, we would have heard them, but we had the internet and we had this censorship industrial complex, and it was easy to silence them. But guess what? They're running the NIH and the CDC right now, so good will prevail.
Right,
So,
absolutely. I want to go into, well, two things. My first question is, what is your background that you decided to make this film?
well, I came here I came to the United States, to New York, to Brooklyn specifically, from Odessa in the Soviet Union when I was 6 in 1977. And we left because we were Jewish, and it was very clear that there was no future for us there, no past either, really. It was not a friendly place to Jews. I mean, but everybody wanted to get out. Anyway, so we came here, and my parents went to work immediately. I went to first grade and acquired English pretty quickly because there was no choice. Like, it was like sink or swim. And I also went to a Jewish school and learned Hebrew and got a real classical education, which I'm very grateful for, and I'm a big proponent of. And went to NYU and ended up moving to Los Angeles because I really wanted to work in the film industry. This was in the 90s, and did a bunch of different jobs, but ultimately decided that New York, I think, is my forever home. So I came back in my 20s, and have just kind of dabbled in and out of film, and went to NYU and got a master's in food studies. So I had that kind of advocacy background in a way, because our department at NYU, food studies, nutrition, and at the time was public health, we were taught by an incredible professor named Dr. Marion Nessel. And Marion is a former FDA agent and has written about food politics and food safety. And so she's now about 90 and still actively writing, teaching, and lecturing all over the country. But I think it was 20 years ago. She was incredibly active and connected, and spent a lot of time helping us understand what good science was and what was bad science, specifically as it came to food and food studies, right? Like research on, dietary benefits or negatives or whatever, and how industry science gets funded, right? It's all about what kind of questions you ask, like what are you trying to do? Is it an open inquiry, or are you trying to drive towards a predetermined conclusion? She also helped us understand, about how the media reports specifically on food, nutrients, diet, fat, whatever. But I think that kind of inoculation was incredibly helpful when COVID came around, because I was asking questions like she would ask questions in our classroom. And I feel like it became clear pretty quickly. I mean, I think the other thing that was incredibly, I don't know if there's a word, inoculative, was being a Soviet immigrant and hearing about what happened back in the Soviet Union, and my parents' constant fear of speaking out, spies, people hearing you, all of that. Like, it just felt so far, and it wasn't my experience in this country. I had such a free, unfettered life, but there was always that shadow, and I had their stories, and I knew that they were accurate reporters. So when I started seeing like the censorship creep, that was also concerning, because it kind of reminded me of something that I thought was in the past.
Right. The book Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreyer talks a bit about the Soviet experience and just the things that they went through. And I would say that we live in a very Soviet society now. It's very, living in Utah, it's very much like you have to make, and you would be the same way in New York. You have to make this choice. Do I love truth enough to risk being hated, or having like people wish that you're dead, or do I value my peace more? Right. But to me, there's no peace. There's no peace if you can't speak truth.
Right. Because what are we leaving for our children? I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. It doesn't, there's got to be some sort of a balance of the two, though. Because I think, I mean, you're in the state where Charlie Kirk was murdered. And I imagine it's changed what people might be willing to say in public and what they might be willing to do. I don't know. Do you think it has?
What it's done is it's made the people who were already, remember the whole "We Are Charlie" moment that everybody had. And it was only a moment, sadly, because of all the crazy out there. But it's made the people who really were, the people like us. It's made those people go, kill me then, like I don't care. I'm going to speak truth. What you've done is proven to me the importance that there is no like lukewarmness, because famously, I see what made you cheer, right?
Mhm.
So and unfortunately we flat out saw. Now the hard thing to reconcile with, and I would say it gives you some PTSD, the hard thing to reconcile with is that it's not just the people like the crazy ones that you see on Libs of TikTok. For us, it is a lot of calm, cool, collected religious people who celebrated, or who are at least glad he was dead. And so yeah, it is very much like everywhere I go, everywhere, when I speak, I'm taking a risk. So be it. So it's a very interesting place to be. But I mean, you're in New York. You've got,
Yeah. I mean, but I don't do a ton of public speaking, not that I'm not willing to. I mean, if somebody invites me, I'll show up.
yeah.
But I've been asking since Charlie was murdered, I've been asking myself what it would have been like if that had happened in 2020, 2021. Now, having had the privilege of getting to know Jay Bhattacharya, I don't believe it would have changed anything he would have done. I think he would have continued exactly on his path because I think he sees it as his calling, and he's a man of truth, honor, and God. So I don't think that would have changed anything, but maybe some of the others it would have. I don't know.
I
I
think the God thing is I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, yes. Go ahead. I think you're about to hit it right there, right on the head.
It is the God thing that keeps you going. Um, Scriptures say, "Count it all joy," and finish your race. Those two things keep you going when you feel like. So right now I'm reading the book, The Devil and Karl Marx.
Oh, I saw that on your Facebook.
Chapter 5 is it talks about the Bolsheviks.
Hmm.
And it's hard for me when he said that your family fled, because I know what they were doing. And it was so intense. I thought Charlie's death was evil. And it was. It was, but it was quick. These people delighted in torturing and in killing people's faith. That was their big thing. And I feel like that's the same as this whole thing, just to bring it back into this thing, is that you want to kill people's desire to even tell the truth. You want to kill their will. And that is what we watched. And then we saw it be intentional. So I want to play one small piece of Randy Weingarten, and just to show how intentional this whole thing was. And it is going to be a little bit blurry for my audience, but I did that on purpose. So let me see.
Everybody else who said, let's also try to envision how to use this for what the society that we.
I'll just play it one more time. Just 20 seconds, so, or maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I have to leave it for a second and then come back. Okay, one more time. Nope. All right, well, anyways. So she says, how can we use this for the society that we want to see?
In March 2020.
Right. Right. So we're exactly, my friends, at 6 years. And again, it feels personal. It makes me angry because pretty much exactly this day is when we closed down. And the reason I know that is because it was a week before my son's birthday. And all of a sudden, I had to tell all of his friends, you don't get a birthday party. He doesn't get a birthday party. And we really, within that first week, we were like, yes, he does. And none of our friends would come, right? Because they were all scared. And the crazy thing to me about them being all scared is that I have an only child, and I called the school and I said, I will wrap my son in bubble wrap. I do not want him to die, right? Like what can I do? And the school counselors told me, and they quote, Carrie, this really doesn't affect children. No, if it puts you at any kind of ease, no teachers, no counselors are going to pull their kids out of school. because this doesn't affect kids. It affects the elderly. So we really, like, if you need to, that's fine, but we really would encourage you not to, because it just doesn't affect children. And 3 days later, come get your kids. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there was a period when they were telling the truth. I mean, I even have a letter from the head of the Department of Health and Hygiene from like February 2020. I have it somewhere here in the house. I saved it, and it said, there's this virus. It's in China. It's coming through from travelers. Don't worry. It's not particularly dangerous to you or to children. Please do not send your children into school with face masks. They impede learning. And if they get in the way of the class, your child may be asked to remove them. February 2020.
Yeah, that's watching them do that and watching how calculated it was. I'm going to share that video too, just of how calculated, how they would say one thing and then switch it. And then what I noticed in this little piece was, did they not only switch it, but then they used words, they started to use the kind of coded language, misinformation. You know, you were like, we're the victims because people said something that they weren't supposed to say. That starts now. So let me pull that one up.
American Association of Pediatricians is clarifying its stance on reopening schools in the fall. They say their guidance has been misunderstood and misrepresented. The AAP's new stance emphasized the need for substantial new investments in schools in order for them to reopen.
Yeah.
It was the bottomless pit. Like it was like you'd never get to the goalpost. You were set up to fail. The reality was that the schools had been completely safe. There was nothing wrong with the schools. Tracy Hogue talks about the schools in Scandinavian countries. They didn't make any adjustments. Everybody was fine. And then you have like people like Randy Weingarten saying, well, they're Scandinavian. Like, what are you trying to say? Are you like being Scandinavian doesn't give you any natural health advantages. It's just a subset, you know, of population. Like, oh, you know, they're Europe and they have better healthcare. Again, doesn't impact how safe somebody is in the schools, but they use the term resources as really, you know, an extortion. It was a ransom note that could never be paid.
Right. Well, one of the pieces where Randy Weingarten is talking, and she says, social justice is, or equity is social justice. Equity is racial justice. Equity is gender justice. And also even the word safe, right?
Yeah.
So safe, once again, I know I'm using like liberal words, but coded. These words are coded just like all students are coded. We care for all students. No, you focus on a particular subset. That's what you focus on. You don't care for all students, because if you did, then you would realize that the people who were most disadvantaged, as you show in your film, people who use sports to stay away from gangs, and then they couldn't even play. Watching these kids who that was their chance into a college, and they lost it for greed. Gosh, what's the actress who? Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda saying COVID is a gift to the left.
God's gift to the left.
God's gift to the left. And then she kind of smugly smiles. Oh, that was a hard one to watch. It was hard. Like, I sat there going, I don't like to be an angry person, but this makes me angry, because they really did do such a disservice to our kids and to us, because really it was that mental breaking. Just like the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks went after, I want to pull it back into that because it's kind of what I do. The Bolsheviks, when they went after Christians, for sure, Orthodox Christians, their goal was to make sure that everything they believed was true. They couldn't even look in the face. That's how much they wanted them destroyed, very much internally. So like their sacrament became a mockery of sacrament. And I don't want to go into more detail than that, but it became a mockery. And it's the same thing when you're looking at something and you know the truth. It's very obvious, it's right in front of your face, but everybody's repeating over and over again. The press, right? The press is repeating over and over again this this lie until it breaks people. And I think we have a lot of broken people today because of it.
And broken institutions. I mean, I was just talking to James Lindsay about this, how people are really kind of in a quagmire where they can't really reliably, differentiate and triangulate because the institutions that they used to trust are completely broken.
Yeah.
And yes, you do have a Jay Bhattacharya or Marty Makari or a Secretary Kennedy who are trying to rebuild them. But unfortunately, the left has engaged in such vile character assassination
Right.
that none of these honest people, and I think all three of them are incredible leaders who really truly care about this country's best interest and our health and our wellness. I don't think that they can recapture trust quickly enough, and it just leaves us in this terrible situation. I mean, personally, as a former Biden voter and a lifelong Democrat in New York City, I voted for President Trump in 2024.
Mhm.
It was the best decision I ever made. I am absolutely astonished at what an effective president he is. And I don't think that people, a huge subset of this population, can even see him for his deeds. They only see the cloud that was the smoke that was blown into their eyes, and they can't even get through it. And that's deeply troubling.
Right. It is I mean, the pandemic is propaganda.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean by so many people who are broken. Like, I made a video yesterday just about why I support certain things, why I support caucus. I didn't mention President Trump. I didn't mention anything like that. I said, our kids deserve to have the freedom to think. And immediately people start sending you messages and they're just so broken, right? They're just so immediately like, you are this and you deserve this. And you're like, holy cow, you're an adult, right? Like, but they're broken. They've been infantilized. They've been, and I think there's also they don't want to admit. I think that
Sunk
a lot of,
cost fallacy.
right?
Sunk cost fallacy.
What'd you say?
Sunk cost fallacy. Like
Explain. Yeah.
they've invested too much in a sinking ship, and now they're going down with their ship. Kind of like parents who trans their kids and
Yes,
become the most fervent activists,
you're
and
right.
they can't even look at the science, like the research, the testimonials of the detransitioners. They can't hear any of it.
Well, it's exactly what Yuri Bezmenov said. When
Mhm.
Yuri Bezmenov said, it doesn't matter if I take you to Russia and I show you the camps, you won't believe it.
Yeah.
And that's been hard to watch with adults. And also just the programmed hatred. That's what I've realized in terms of when they say it's all right to it's good to not tolerate the intolerant. Well, we're considered intolerant, or some of the other terms that they use for, like pandemic denier, just different things that people will use to slander you. And that went to the highest levels, right? I mean, the press was saying it, the president Biden was saying it, his administration, these people are crazy. And it was just like, these
Well,
people were the experts
we were
yesterday,
domestic terrorists, right? I mean,
right?
domestic terrorists. That's we laughed kind of about it at the time, but you listen to Tina at Moms for Liberty or Tiffany or other Moms for Liberty people, and it causes real
Oh,
consequences.
for sure.
Being listed by SPLC as a terrorist, as a hate group. I mean,
Yeah.
that it can get you killed.
Moms for America they had to testify in one of the what is the kangaroo courts. So in DC, they had to go and, say their thing. And you can watch the video of her just saying, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, because it was a joke, but it was a joke at Soviet proportions. Okay, so let's talk about one of the things they said in terms of equity was that everybody needed to be equal in order to go back to school. Again, this doesn't make sense because it's so funny how people will use things like states' rights, but only if it seems like only if it favors, including in Utah, if it favors leftist agendas.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be, states' rights, states' rights to say, no, we're not going to get rid of DEI. But if it is the opposite, it's not that, oh, we have to do it because the president said so.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, it's exactly so. The way I see it is that the teachers' unions are master puppeteers. Well, rather the union leaders, right? In particular, the leaders like Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the AFT, which is the second largest teachers' union, and then Becky Pringle, who is the head of the NEA, and that's the largest teachers' union. But she's not as good at media, and you see that she wasn't used as much. She wasn't the forward. Randy absorbed most of the hate and the vitriol because Randy is a master magician. She's very good. If you watch the film, hopefully everyone who's listening will watch it. Randy, the way she speaks to the progressive NGO partners that they met with in March 2020 is a very different Randy than appears on the news, shortly thereafter, where with her compatriots, her partners, she's talking about how to use this, how to be strategic. Here's our opportunity. We can change the presidency. We can change the government. We can get all the money we wanted to execute our agenda. There's no fear. There's only resolve. And then when she's talking, on Morning Joe or whatever show she was, Chris Hayes, she's just the most empathic, compassionate person who she is not making the decisions. They don't benefit her in any way. They are for the vulnerable. She's protecting the vulnerable. And she is advocating on behalf of her teachers, which is really what her job is, theoretically. That's what her stated job is. That's not her job. She if it is, she failed, because what she then says is, well, the teachers don't feel safe going back to school, so as their leader, I have to support what they want. She's saying the Black community, they don't feel comfortable going back to school, and as somebody who's equity focused, I feel like it's being inequitable to force them into a situation where they're not safe. But what happened behind the scenes, and I know because I was an open schools parent here, the Black community was told the schools are not safe. If you go in this white, racist environment, your children will die. They don't care. They're going to die. You're going to be the sacrificial lambs. Do you feel safe? And the Black community said, no, we don't feel safe. We're not sending our kids in to die. Then she went to the teachers, who, as Scott Atlas in our film talks about, are one of the youngest professions. So schools are actually safer than anywhere else. But she's going to these young, indoctrinated teachers and saying, they don't care about you. This is not an equitable environment. You're going to go in there and there's going to be 35 kids and you're going to die. Do you want to go back to school? No, we don't want to go back to school. And then she's like, oh, look, the Black community doesn't want to go back to school and the teachers don't. It wasn't me. It was the doctors. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just telling you that it's not equitable. It's not safe.
Right. How can a disease be racist? I'm just, I remember the moment that I was like, I don't believe this. And that was because I lived in Seattle at the time, and all of the Chaz and the arguments that if you were fighting for a cause, it would protect you from the virus.
Right.
And a bunch of high school kids went out and got their groove on in the evenings, right? And he just sat there going, okay, no more. You're walking shoulder to shoulder as you're protesting across a bridge for the optics, for that beautiful trouble, but you're not going to get sick somehow. But yet, moving on from when our school started opening, the kids still had to do stupid things like play in the band and have like a bra thing over their instrument, so it would just
Bra thing.
that's really what it was called. It was like a bra for your trumpet, right? And you'd have to like remove it, and you just sat there going, they're brainwashing the kids to be scared all the time.
And it was incredibly effective. We just did a screening at Cornell University at Heterodox Academy, and this young man who was a sophomore or junior at Cornell was saying that he was a LaGuardia High School performing arts here in Manhattan, a student during COVID, and he plays the clarinet, and he said they gave us masks. And they told us to cut holes in it for our musical instruments. He said, I sat there and I'm like, what are we doing here? But this is what they made the students complicit, you know? Like you've involved them in the hoax, and now they're doing it and they're kind of like, well, maybe it worked. Like, I don't know. Like, there's nobody who's helping them, get out of it. And you know what, as somebody who's traveled quite a bit internationally over the past couple of years, I have to tell you that this country is like the only remaining masking country, probably outside of Asia. I haven't been to Asia, but in Europe, nobody masks. Nowhere, nothing. You don't see it except American tourists, usually woke women with pink hair. But it's really astonishing. I was in Copenhagen, I was in Italy. You never, anywhere, not on mass transit, not in restaurants, not on the streets, not anywhere do you ever see anybody masking. You come back and it's still, 20% masked in New York City, perpetually.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it because it gives me this very clear avoid. Nothing.
Well, I think it's really incredible. Like the group think well, first of all, there's a dearth of leadership, or at least there had been. So now that leaders have stepped in, we don't even see them and they're not being followed, which is concerning. But I see this incredible group think, and people are incredibly susceptible to bad ideas.
Right.
I see it on Facebook. I have friends who are pretty influential and have a huge number of followers, and they'll post a bad idea, and other people, identity politics usually really wins. And there's not one person, I see 100 comments and not one person, except for me, who's willing to call them out on it and go, have you examined this idea? Do you really think that this is true? Or like they'll bash on Trump, or they'll say, we're annihilating Iran or whatever. And it doesn't matter. Like, I can bring in an Iranian who lives in this country who's like, hey guys, I'm Iranian. You cannot extract them from the cult. This is a real, what Matthias Desmond calls it mass formation psychosis.
Right.
It's not over.
No, and that's the thing. I believe that in forcing us to affirm lies, it's not so much about making us uncomfortable as much as it is teaching the people that it's okay to hate us. That's really what I see again from history, is that, like, yeah, it's uncomfortable to say the truth, but at least I go home, can look at myself in the mirror and go, yep, still did it. Still did it. Go me. Right. But I do think that the hatred is getting more and more extreme. Mm-hmm. Again, I'll go back to Charlie, and as soon as he was shot, the people on top, this group of kids saying he's dead, yes, he deserved it, and like high-fiving each other. And it's just like, they really do believe that they're virtuous in that. And a huge part of that is the fact that we have convinced people that they're victims. One of the things I'm wondering about, I don't know how it was for you, but how fast were they prepared? Like, how fast did things change from what I would say, quote unquote, normal school, at least normal school as I saw it, to suddenly social justice? Boom.
It's a good question. Um, well, first of all, let me tell you, in our film, we have people who are who were awakened to the COVID hoax, if I can call it that, during the George Floyd riots. And as a Democrat, and I think a bleeding heart liberal, I actually justified them. I was one of the people who thought, well, we need to
Like it
burn
should
it
be
all. It was not my wake-up call, I have to say, not at all. I was 100% on board with the riots. I thought everything needed to be burned down because there was institutional racism, and I really believed that white guilt thing. I mean, I voted for Obama. I thought that was going to absolve us. I voted for him twice. I cried when he won. Like, I was completely bought into it. So I understand the mentality of the other side. It really, that did not awaken me in any way. Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy. But how quickly were they prepared to usher in all the social justice stuff? Um, well, I think that the first thing that, we saw was the kids could go back in, for equity was being used in many different ways, right? Like the term, I think we hadn't heard as much of it. There was like an equity committee all of a sudden that was started in the school. I think it really varied from school to school, depending on who your principal was and how committed they were to social justice. Interestingly enough, our elementary school, our principal is a Black woman from Chicago, who had been at the school for about 15 years and was probably just as team reality as I was, and had zero appetite for any of it. And
Yeah.
so while these schools that were run by woke white women or non-binary men quickly ramped things up, and June became, Pride Month on steroids, our elementary school just kept going with kind of old school, boring book contests. Um, which was fine. So on a micro level, I didn't see it so much, in my own kids' lives. But by the time my older daughter went to middle school, on the first day of sixth grade, which I would say was probably 2022 or so, she was asked for her pronouns. And then by seventh grade, when she had health ed, they were being taught that they were AFABs and AMABs. Have you heard those terms before?
I've heard of AFAB, but you've got to, please clarify.
Assigned female at birth, assigned
Okay.
male at birth. They weren't
Okay.
boys and girls anymore. They had become,
Wow.
assignments.
How
So
did your daughter take it?
Oh, I mean, I think that she was, I guess, on the plus side of being part of the truth movement, like she had heard all this stuff at home before. So that is incredibly inoculative. And so it's kind of like, well, this is like, what is this garbage? Like, they can't believe that they're, and to this day, many people don't even know that this is going on. Like,
Right.
that's why it's important to talk to your kids and make sure that they know that you are aware of what's happening. So just let us know what's happening so we can take that temperature in the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
But it ramped up pretty quickly. We had New York City like pushing in social emotional learning into schools, and it always was cloaked in such nice language. It's so hard not to like social emotional learning. It sounds so nice, but because I had been, already in many chats and had been speaking to people who were ahead of the curve on the identity politics, I was kind of just watching and going, oh, now I understand why this may not be beneficial to our children. And then thank God for Abigail Schreier and her courage and irreversible damage. And then the next book on therapy. I mean, I think she is absolutely a treasure. And I think her speaking out was really impactful for me personally. So I was very aware.
So it might have been because you were a Democrat that it didn't seem like it was. For me, it was like overnight. It was literally you're sitting there and the schools are closed down, and then a music teacher said, hey, we're inviting the kids to come out and to take a knee in the street, lay in the street for just 8 minutes to honor George Floyd. And then within like the next day, schools close the next day, parents get an email, and the email is, don't ask questions. Asking questions is whiteness. And that was kind of my reaction. I was like, oh, really? Oh, really? Well, guess what? I'm just going to use my whiteness. I'm just going to read through all of your stuff. And it took me to Black Lives Matter. And it took me straight to, before they took it down, we are trained Marxists. You know, and I just sat there going, oh, you want to abolish the family. Oh, you believe that being on time is whiteness. Yes. And that whole Smithsonian thing. And I just sat there going, so no. And that was literally the moment that my Facebook became more than just, here's a picture of my food, to let me write everything I think. It was that moment, because I just thought, nobody's going to push back on this. Mm-hmm. And I had people who would call me and say, I'm sorry, I've never really thought of you as being a Black person. And I'm just like, obviously you did. Because I haven't talked to you in 5 years and you're calling me an apologist. Okay.
I'm sorry, but we have to laugh about this. This is the funniest thing I've ever heard.
So my favorite was, there were two places. There was one that was buy Black people a pizza. And my son was like, so Mom, can I like buy myself a pizza? And the other was when people, I'm not joking, 4 pies in one day, because it was bring your Black neighbor a pie.
Oh my God, I can't. This is Seattle?
Yeah. And I just sat there going, I would have crossed the street if I would have seen George Floyd. I have no problem with being like, I'm not a gangster. I'm not related to gangsters. Stop putting me into this box, right?
Right.
And it happened immediately. And it was such a bridesmaids from my wedding were calling me and saying things like, you just don't understand your situation. Well, you're a friend of mine on Facebook. You know how self-aware I am. Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand my situation. I don't understand where I come from. I've known you for 20 years. Come on, people. But it was just the way it broke people. So,
were you able to keep those relationships?
No. No. I tried a couple of, for months. My final straw was, I'd heard, and I don't know if it was gossip or whatever, but I heard that they were building camps in Washington State. And I was in a store. I was in Winco late at night shopping, because they didn't care if you wear a mask. So it was late at night shopping. And my son's best friend's father was in there. And I just said, you know what I'm really stressed out about is, I said, I think they're going to come after Christians. Mm-hmm. And my friend's father said, yeah, I can see that. So, I mean, you could just stop being a Christian. And I was like, okay, we need to leave now. We need to leave. If our own friends mm-hmm. are saying that, we need to leave. And so watching the way that people were broken, it became too much for me. And also realizing that my friends were inherently racist. Mm. That was hard for me, because I was like, we've been in each other's weddings. I was there when your child was born. You know, you threw my baby shower. Like, to know that I was less than a human being, because the media told them I was. Mm-hmm. You know, and so watching my friends be broken it's too much for me. I've got a few family members same way, where it's just like, yeah, I can't because you literally think that you're superior and that I don't know my own position, my own status, my own wherever I stand in the world, right? And
What Woody Allen said, he was in an interview with Barry Weiss just a few months ago, and he said humans are a failed species. I tend to agree with him.
I don't because I seek out the heroes, right? And so because I get to seek out the heroes, I get to see those people who give you hope, and being able to talk to them, and being able to be one, honestly, being able to uplift people makes me have hope. And also teaching, the fact that I teach a bunch of young people and, fight like hell for them.
Yeah.
Which, so I refuse to believe that we're failed, but I do believe that failure is by design. The fact that African Americans were willing to go, we don't feel safe. Yes, racism is going to kill us. Racism is never, I've dealt with it. Racism doesn't kill you. And I don't believe most people are inherently racist. I don't believe systems aren't, well, I do believe systems are racist, but not in the way that most people think, right?
Mhm.
Systemic racism is that teacher who has a kid come into classroom and thinks less of them or thinks that they can't achieve. That's systemic racism. Not, this school gets less, because it's also not true anymore.
Mhm.
We've done a lot in terms of equity to make sure that low income schools have a lot of opportunities, and especially minority kids have a lot of opportunities, and oftentimes more so than white Americans.
Yes. I used to work in some of the schools here in Harlem and the Bronx with a chef from the South Bronx, and the Title I schools that had all the funding had indoor gardens. They had so many more like daytime resources than some of the other schools that had the bigger PTA budgets, but not necessarily better outcomes. And we need to look at why. I mean, it's the nuclear family and preservation of nuclear family and striving to get two parents in the home rather than children raised by single mothers, right? I mean, statistically, that's the best predictor.
Well, it's also that these programs create entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have to work hard for something, the people who succeeded the most in the African American community succeeded under Booker T. Washington.
Mm.
And they started off, Tuskegee was a chicken coop to start with. And he said, you know what? Start building the bricks. Start building the bricks. You're going to learn skills. You're going to learn how to do these things. And we've stripped that from our kids. In the name of equity, we've stripped the people who've taught them how to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the politicization now. Growing up, or not growing up, because you were only 6 when you came here, but your Soviet experience, would you say that our schools go as far as to be Soviet and even communist? Do you think that Randy Weingarten is an actual communist?
I think it's worse than that.
Okay.
In the last few months, I've kind of come to a realization that I don't think Randy Weingarten or Becky Pringle or Sanders or Rashida Tlaib or anybody in the DSA, I don't actually think that they work on behalf of the American government, or they're not agents of America, the Republic. I think they're foreign agents. And I don't think I'm wrong on that. It doesn't make sense. Like even, the extortion, the remodeling of society, none of it really benefits anyone in this country. And, the more parents complain and advocates complain about NAEP scores, reading, math, and all of that,
Right.
I again have to remind them, back in 2021, Cecily Mayart Cruz, the head of the LA Teachers Union, which is one of the top teachers unions in the country, basically said their goal wasn't to teach children reading or math. She said, it doesn't matter if our babies don't know their times tables, they know the difference between a riot and a coup. So to me, that's in the service of a foreign government. That's not in the service of this government or this country. It's a way to end this country. I think gender ideology is another one. It's like these internal, all the things that the teachers unions push destabilize this country. I don't think anybody can argue that they make this country better. So yes, I think they're hostile enemies of the state. And Mike Pompeo had once, probably in 21, 22, called Randy Weingarten the most dangerous person in America. And I got to weigh in on that. The New York Post asked me to write a complimentary op-ed piece, and I did. I agreed with him, and I still think that's true.
I definitely think that that's true. I am going to go back into the thing that I said I wasn't in terms of the Soviet situation, because I think that the gender ideology does the same thing. Those detransitioners have a hard time looking themselves in the mirror. They're like, how did I get duped? But they also have a resentment. Now, the same thing happened with the priests when they would be taken into basically the gulags or whatever kind of, they were tortured, but they were more than tortured. They were taught to, so an example of the sacrament, they would take their sacrament, that's the bread and the wine, right? And they would instead be forced to drink urine and eat feces, and way worse things than that. That's mild of what happened. But the point was to take everything they believed, every piece of truth that they had, and to ruin that until their brains were broken. And I do think that that's what the attack on truth, the attack on our children is that, especially the gender stuff. One, it does turn our kids into activists, if not assassins. But it also breaks their mind. How did I fall for that?
It's
and
not just them, right? Because I mean, so if you have a trans family member, now everybody in that family and every single one of the friends has to participate in this illusion of reality, right? Because it demands compliance. Because if not, what are you gonna do? Like alienate that family member? So it's viral.
Right. Yeah, and that is what happens. So you don't alienate the family member, you alienate the people in the family who hold on to truth. Either way, it destroys the family unit, which really seems like that was a part, but the real part was to kind of test how many people will swallow the lie. And unfortunately, so many did, at such a detriment. I want to know, like, those athletes that couldn't compete at the same level that they did before, did they have a good outcome? Were they able to ever regain the strength and get the scholarships?
I think it depends. I did about 60 interviews over the course of 3 years, a number of athletes, but to be honest, the athletes that we interviewed were part of an organization called About You that was helping them both academically and with their athletics. So they were the lucky ones. And so one of the athletes we interviewed, him and his father, Michael Pinckney, is now at UCLA. He's finishing UCLA. He's been on a full sports scholarship. He's been getting exceptional grades. He'll probably go on to the Olympics. But that was because his father, explored all the different sports with him, because Michael was not interested in football or basketball. He wasn't interested in most things, but he was interested eventually and had incredible aptitude at throwing. And because his father had gone to school on a sports scholarship, I think at the University of Delaware, and knew the value and was already comfortable as a physical therapist, had an established life, he had the means and the education to be able to invest in Michael. And I think he says in the film, I think about what could have happened to Michael, if this had happened at a different time in his junior year or whatever, and that had never happened. But Michael talks about the fact that, the kids he had competed with before COVID, he comes back and they're gone. He doesn't know what happened to them. So no, I don't think that many of them, they left school, they quit the education and went into work or God knows what else. Bam, Garrett Morgan, who is another young man we interviewed for the film and has become a good friend of mine. I just saw him a week ago. He's doing well. It's a different path than what he had expected. He gained a lot of weight. He was already extremely overweight, but he was playing football, and having that sport taken away from him for a year really did not do much for his, physical health. And he gained more weight, and he tried to go back and since he wasn't scouted for college. He took a bonus year at a military academy and played more football right after he finished his senior year at a public school in New York City. But that his sport never really came back, unfortunately. So, because again, this is a young man who's got incredible supports. He's very smart. He was a student body president at his high school. He ended up going to a community college, which he is now finishing. And he's a very hard worker. He is again the president of his student body. He's about to go to a 4-year school and then potentially to law school or some graduate degree. So physically, he's still struggling quite a bit with his weight. So that's challenging for him. But in terms of academics and success, I have no doubt that BAM will be a huge success. He already is. But again, loving family and support system of great coaches and infrastructure. But, I don't think that every kid had that. So,
how about let's what lasting damage? And I'm asking that question specifically because I worked for a charter school that basically, like, it followed the rules that it was forced to follow, and the rest of it was like, no, this is insane. And those kids are okay for the most part. What lasting damage has this caused? Maybe the majority of kids?
I mean, I don't know. Ultimately, like, time will tell. I think these things can be epigenetic, and you can see them express themselves generations down the line. It's hard to have 6 years, still not that much time.
Yeah.
But I worry, and one of the reasons why this film was important for me to make is that I wanted to make sure that kids knew that people fought for them, because oftentimes their parents didn't.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how disturbing it was, even at our elementary school, to drop my kids off in masks and then go home feeling I felt so much pain, like knowing that these kids had to have their noses and mouths covered the entire day, not see a teacher smile at them. Like, there's a lot of, endorphins released when you smile at each other. And they were being deprived. Like, you think about like the Romanian orphanages and the babies who'd never been held. Well, maybe that was more drastic, but these things do accumulate. And
Right.
I had a kindergartner, first grader, and then fourth grader, and I was thinking about all the kids in between, and the fact that the parents, I was one of the only parents who was fighting for the masks, to come off. Most people just said, well, they said that it's safe and the kids are okay. My kids are fine. They're fine. That, I think, seeing that the parents didn't fight for them, I worry about what that does to parenthood in America. And
Yeah. I think it's red-pilled, and also it has put a kind of a wedge in the family relationship. I've had many kids say, us kids know something's wrong. When are the adults going to stand for us? They know that from elections all the way down. They just go, something is fundamentally wrong here. When are they going to stand? Tonight, for instance, is our caucus, and I've been begging parents, you got to stand up, because otherwise your kids are going to live under this authoritarian thing that is going to stop them from being able to think. They're going to have to live the lies, because those are the people, like for us, there's literally campaigns saying, go crash their caucus so that you can get more quote unquote moderates. That's what we're dealing with. And meanwhile, again, these are the people who mocked and used Charlie's death. So my final question is, once parents wake up, how can they effectively advocate? And also, if you have any ideas on how to get parents to wake up, because I know they love their kids, but sometimes they think, and I know this because I've talked to people behind closed doors. People will tell me, this is happening at my school. Please don't use my name. I've got a business. I've got whatever, right? And so their love is in security. Their love is in financial comfort. And I'm not going to judge them for that. I mean, maybe I am. I don't know.
I think it's okay to judge.
What I mean is that if you've invested everything and you tried and you mapped out your life, and then you were just bombarded with this insanity, which a lot of people in their jobs are, you're now going to put your pronouns in. If you don't want to put your pronouns in, you want to have a job.
Right.
Okay. So people go, whatever, I'll do it. Even if behind closed doors, the problem is that a ton of those people start adopting these ideas. I had a teacher once say, I used to feel like you. I felt uncomfortable going to these trainings, but the more I go, the more comfortable I feel. And you sit there going, yes, because you're being brainwashed. Of course. So what's effective?
I think this is the answer that I tend to give all the time, and people are surprised. I think learning how to cook and eating dinner with your family in a phone-free environment is probably the best thing you can do. If everybody did this, and Kennedy, the HHS secretary, just said that everybody should learn how to cook. And all these people are laughing at him. Oh, this is so stupid. He's 100% right.
Yeah.
It's not a technological solution. Like, actually, it's going back to analog solutions, the things that our grandparents did.
Yeah.
The reason your kids are so susceptible to all this is because they don't have a firm nucleus in the home. And also the fact that there's we've misprioritized things. It is not a waste of time to shop for food. It is not a waste of time to take your kids on errands. It is not a waste of time to cook food together. It is not a waste of time to sit at the table and just look at each other, even if there's nothing to say. It is not a waste of time. All these efficiencies are actually eroding what it means to be human. And so, and then the other thing is religion. Going to church together. You don't have to believe in God.
I was about to ask you that. What if you don't believe in God? But yeah.
I don't believe in God.
Okay.
But that's okay. I was just listening to Dennis Prager talking to Abigail Schreier about this. It was an incredible conversation on the Free Press yesterday. And he said, I don't argue for the existence of God. I argue for the necessity.
Okay.
And he said, if there is no God, if we don't believe in God, then man is not created in his likeness. And then we spiral into chaos. And so I agree with him. I heard Jordan Peterson talking about this to Ayaan Hirsi Ali a number of years ago, probably a year or two ago, which I thought was really interesting too, about how she found Christianity and converted and why it was essential for her. I never heard an argument for the absolute existence of God, which, you may or may not believe in, but I definitely heard a need that was met. So I think our children really need something like that. It doesn't mean, you have to go against your conscience and tell them something that isn't there, but exposing them to ancient texts and rituals, and giving them some sort of grounding where they can contextualize the world, and understand that these problems that they're experiencing aren't that unique, and that they've been experienced in one way or another over, millennia. That would be really, really helpful. So I really think it's not very complicated, and everybody can afford it.
I love that. I mean, I do stand on a different. I am a non-denominational Christian, but I do. I was in a church and I left it because somebody who was higher up said, even if God isn't true, I would still go to church. And I just thought, why are you leading if you
Mhm.
don't believe in God?
Right.
But I do see, and I also worry about people being misled. You know,
Mhm.
like there there have been since the 1930s communists who've infiltrated Christian churches and fundamentally changed what it means to believe in God.
Yes, let's talk about the Unitarian Universalists. That's at the top of that list.
Or James Tallarico.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of things that one could talk about. That's actually what I'm going to talk about in my next kind of monologue series. But I guess my final thing for you, we did go a little over an hour. My final thing for you is your film. How can people watch it? How can people host it? Tell me all the good stuff. And also, where can they find your information?
There's a lot of answers, and I'm trying to streamline it for people. Well, first of all, it's available. It just launched on Amazon Prime, Google Play, and Apple TV, so they can find it on all of those channels. But we do have a dedicated website. I haven't actually put up the links because it's just me, and I'm like totally overwhelmed. But we do have a dedicated website for the film. It's 15daysfilm.com. So 15daysfilm.com. There you can get a digital 4K or a DVD. You can get my email address and contact me. You can sign up to host a screening. All the information that we had up until Friday is like live there. And then if people want more information, they can just email me at Natalya@restorechildhood.com or just get the information on 15daysfilm.com. It's all there.
And if you send that to me, I'll add it to the show notes.
Okay, great. I will.
And I think, is there anything else that I missed in covering?
No, this is such a great conversation. I mean, I think this is the conversation I want to be having, and I think you asked some really great questions, and I hope people, take a look at their lives and see where they can make more meaningful connections with family, and especially reconnecting the generations. I think that gap that, don't go near grandma because you'll kill her. That was like the final straw. That's really what broke us. And I think everything they told us not to do, we should do, and then we should be okay.
You've convicted me a little bit because I've got my son will be 18 next week. And just over the last couple of years, we're a close family, but just over the last couple of years since he's gotten earbuds, earbuds, and he goes downstairs and has dinner in front of the TV. And I'm like, okay, well, he's getting back from a tour tonight. I'm going to go clean off my dinner table and make sure that is an absolute priority. Even though I'm this parental rights advocate and I fight like hell for our kids, even I can slip and say, it's okay. He's almost an adult. The more we say it's okay, they're almost an adult, or, they just need their time, or whatever it is, whatever we blow out, whatever we prioritize, that's what they're going to take into that next generation as well. So I think it's really important, and I appreciate the conviction. And I do, I hope that when people go to church, they feel something, and it sparks some hope in them. And maybe if it is a matter of just going through the motions, eventually what I believe is truth will win out. But even if it doesn't, I still think it's better to be doing that than to be embracing something that teaches you hatred.
I love churches. I'm Jewish. I've always loved churches, particularly Catholic churches. I seek them out. I don't have any problem with going and sitting for a service or any of that. I love the art. I love the rituals. I love listening. I think it's a salve to the brain. I don't think it needs, I don't think you need to be, a believer in everything to be a believer in many of the lessons and just the entirety of the experience.
And just being open to it, I think just to just to listening and just seeking out the humanity. That's the last thing, is that we were told to live like this, right? And that made us, and there were babies. I've got babies in my family who had these on and they can hardly speak, right?
Mhm.
So, but this was about dehumanizing each other. This was about,
Yep.
I'm not looking at your face. You know, we're just sheep moving. We're just people that are just passing each other. We're not connecting. And I used to go into the stores and purposely like take that thing down. Like I'd walk past the people that I had to take it down under my chin and just say, it's okay to smile at each other. And people would literally cry in the store. I would say, can I give you a hug? You know, and I would honestly say, especially because I always tend to live in rural areas. And so I would honestly say, I need this so that, you know, I don't hate you. Like the spewing that's going on of people who look like me, like the Joy Reids, the Ta-Nehisi Coates, all of those people. I was like, I need to show you that I see you as a human being.
Mhm.
And I think that helped, you know. Did it make some, you know, there are those people that you run from. No, thank you. Keep wearing your mask. But there were people who it helped. And I think that as long as we are people who want to help, we are not a failed species.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Natalya, thank you so much for joining me. I very much appreciate it. I'll have some reels for you shortly and I'll send them over. Thank you for being one of the heroes.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. I really enjoy reading everything you write on your Facebook.
I appreciate that. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.